Welcome to Southern Jukebox, ladies and gentlemen. It's our debut episode. I'm John Wilson, your host, with my co-host Todd Arrington and Ed Marconi. Ed is our Yankee resident.
Our resident Yankee.
I'm
wearing gray, though.
Yeah, well, there you go. There's that. And Todd's wearing blue. He couldn't be more Southern.
And he's from the South.
Yeah. So, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is our first episode. We're going to kick things off. We're going to talk about something that just was recently celebrated, which was the 50th anniversary of the recording of At Fillmore East by the Allman Brothers. And Ed's got some cool information. You know a guy that was actually there when they recorded one of the shows.
I sure do. Actually, this friend of mine was a bit of a mentor of mine when I was younger. I was about 19 years old in the late 80s, this was, and he was in his, late 30s. And I said, man, you must have seen some good acts. And he goes, oh, I saw some good acts. And he had mentioned that he walked in on March 13th, 1971, made his way through the doors at the Fillmore East, and he was going there to see Johnny Winter. There was no other band listed on the ticket, and he saw these guys setting up with Marshall Stacks, and he said, oh no, this is going to be a insanely loud band, and they're going to be horrible. That's what he thought. And he thought, just for fun, after Bill Graham had actually gone on the stage and said, give these boys a little extra love. You know, and I'm paraphrasing what he told me. I don't remember exactly the way he told me Bill Graham said it, but Bill Graham put that news flash out over the whole auditorium and said, listen, they're going to be recording a live album. So just show them a little support and be there for them, and you're going to love them anyway. And oddly enough, he moved up from his seat. He moved up to about the fifth row. I don't know where it was he said he was. He moved up, and oddly enough, he was right in front of Duane Allman. They fired up the first song, and he said, this is pretty good. And he said by the second song, he said, these guys got it going on. And he said, he told me by the third song he was hooked. He wanted to find out when they were playing, when they were coming around again. And sure enough, only 3 months later, he went to closing weekend as well. The evening that wound up being the 7 a.m. finish the gig night. That's the one he was at. That was the one that was not recorded. The one that you hear recorded, part of it, it was some of it was originally released on Eat a Peach. I believe One Way Out from that show was on there. And then later on, the Eat a Peach Deluxe Edition had the whole set on there on the second CD. That was June 27, 71. And that was the actual closing night. That was only open to industry people. There were no tickets available for that concert. That was all inner circle music people from around what they call the tri-state area of New York.
Right.
Recording studio people, other musicians, executives, or whoever, friends of Bill Graham, friends of the Fillmore East staff. That evening that you hear recorded had no public, you might say, audience members.
Well, I heard a story that Tom Dowd, their producer, was not in town the first night they recorded, and Duane had all these horn players come in and play horns, and then Tom didn't know he was going to do that. And when he got into town and listened to what they recorded, he said, no, this isn't working, man. You can't keep those horns. We're not using horns on this deal. And I thought that was kind of interesting because, you think about horns, how they're used to accent stuff, and you think about the Allman Brothers, and it's like, I don't know how the horns would accent.
Is there any room? That's the first question I would ask. Is there even any room for horns,
I would love
King
to have
Curtis
heard
was
that,
there, though. King Curtis was there.
They kept King Curtis for like one show, I think.
I think the first night.
Yeah.
Or the second night. The first night was the all horn section night that wasn't recorded, and that was, throw that out the window.
Yeah. But, it was pretty cool that, that was 50 years ago. I mean, that's before my time, before any of us, actually. But I would have loved to have been there that night, and you're talking about the coming out at 7 o'clock in the morning, everybody. I've heard that for a lot of people that were there, it was like a religious experience, So that's a really cool thing, man, to celebrate at Fillmore East 50th anniversary. I got that box set that came out a couple of years ago that had all the recordings, including the closing show on that, and those recordings are really good. Really good. You can't really discuss enough how influential that live album is to not just the Southern rock genre, but just rock and blues. Anybody that loves playing the guitar, man, you really, if you don't know who the Allman Brothers are, you're doing yourself a disservice.
It's in the Smithsonian.
Really? I didn't know that.
It is in the Smithsonian.
That's the truth, yeah.
The record, and because of the impact that it's had, has been on display in the Smithsonian for 15 years, 20 years, something like that.
That's great, man.
Yeah.
Southern rock in the Smithsonian, which is funny because they never liked the name Southern rock. None of those guys from the original, bands from the 70s cared for that term, Southern rock.
I like Greg Allman's quote whenever he hears that terminology. And Greg Allman would always say in an interview, he would always say, that sounds so ridiculous because rock and roll came from the South. It's like calling it rock.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
I love that. I seen him do that a few times, like on YouTube, and it's just hilarious, boy. And he's right. He's right. Me coming from the North, I don't know if it's in the water, the air, or the dirt. I don't know, but there's something about the music that comes from, south of the Mason-Dixon line, all the way down to the Bayou in Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
It has the true heart and soul of what has become really all of American music.
Exactly.
All of American music really was birthed down here. Coming from New York, you get to see a lot of, you might say, great, sonic offspring of what came from down here.
Right.
Because it winds up going into the big cities. I was saying earlier before we started recording, San Francisco in the late 60s, New York, and London were the meccas of popular music, mainly because of that's where it was being pushed out of, that's where it was being manufactured, the vinyl was being pressed out of there. So they were the center of all that, and all the while the real product was getting planted in the soil, you might say, and sprouted in the South.
Yeah, man.
Think about it. The turn of last century, Louisiana, New Orleans, Dixieland jazz, right? Later on, the 1920s, Georgia, Jimmy Rogers, the birth of country music. Fast forward another 30 years later, and this is where we want to get into it now, right? Memphis, Tennessee. Elvis Presley, Sam Phillips, Jerry Lee Lewis, Johnny Cash. Rock and roll was birthed here.
Sure it was. Absolutely. But it's loved worldwide.
It is, man.
Absolutely,
it really is.
Worldwide. Another band, that we're going to talk about on and off on this show is Lynyrd Skynyrd, man. I mean, we started out with the Allman Brothers, but we're going to jump into Lynyrd Skynyrd. They got a new release coming out that I have been waiting on for a very long time for a couple of different reasons. Their 1976 Knebworth show from England, where they opened up for the Rolling Stones, is being released in multiple formats pretty soon. And I'm just going to tell you, man, a lot of people will have seen this footage if they saw Freebird, the movie that was from 1996.
About 5 songs at least, I think, from there.
It's several, but
yeah.
they didn't include all the songs. But this is actually the whole concert in its entirety being released on vinyl, CD, I'm pretty sure digital download, DVD, and Blu-ray. But it's the Blu-ray that I am really excited about, because as a special feature on the Blu-ray only is the 2018 documentary that was produced by CMT but ended up on Showtime somehow. I'm not sure how. It went through so many different things to get on air. I'm not sure why all that was, but the documentary is called If I Leave Here Tomorrow, and if you have not seen that documentary, you need to see it if you're a big fan of Skynyrd. It's a well directed, it's well put together. The director was Stephen Kijak, and I know for a fact that he's been waiting for this thing to come out on home video for a while, because the fans have been hitting up the official Facebook page of the documentary going, when is this thing going to be on video? When can we get it? I mean, you can stream it, But you still got people who would like to actually own a physical copy of it. And I think it was actually a very genius idea. Whoever decided to put this package together, that was a great idea to include this documentary with this performance.
Agreed.
I mean, I just cannot wait for this thing to come out, you know. But had you guys seen any of the footage? Like, have you seen Freebird the movie?
I saw Freebird the movie in the movie theater when it came out.
I did too.
Yeah.
I won tickets on the radio station to see it in Raleigh.
Oh, get it!
I was the last one to call in and won tickets on the radio. That was the only way you could see it. Did you win tickets to see it?
No, I didn't win tickets.
Were you in Raleigh then?
No, I was still up in Long Island, New York.
That's right.
Sorry, I got to put on my Yankee accent once in a while. But
welcome Brian Setzer to the podcast, everybody.
We're gonna rock this town.
There you go. Yeah, I won tickets, man. They had a contest, and I was literally the last person to win from the radio station that had done the tickets. And what's so crazy is the night after the show, I got home, and I always had a radio on when I would go to bed. And I'm a teenager when this happened. I was probably 17. 96. I was 16. So I don't know how old I was. Anyway, I can't even remember how old I am now. Anyhow, I turned the radio station on, and it sounded like a bunch of construction, literally like bulldozers and stuff on the radio. I was like, what is this? And the next morning, it had changed over to a pop station. It wasn't classic rock anymore.
No.
The same night as the concert was aired at the movie theater. But, you know, it was really cool because it made the news, and there were people dancing in the aisles. It was really like being at the concert. And it was kind of emotional for me because, I mean, anybody knows me knows I'm a huge Skynyrd nut. And to be able to see Ronnie Van Zant and Steve Gaines and Alan Collins and everybody who, you know, has passed away since, you know, on screen and that big, it was just, it was unbelievable. And that was a night I'll never forget.
Well,
but
depends what was going on before, whether you remembered it or not.
But I'm just so excited about this release. I just cannot tell you.
And I'll tell you, for our younger listeners, it's something that a lot of people take for granted now.
Sure.
I felt the same way when I saw the film, and it was really because there was no YouTube yet. There was barely internet, really.
Right.
There was no Amazon. There was no eBay even, I don't think, at that time. And so what you had was a few websites here and there, and the word surfing had just come onto the scene, surfing the web. There wasn't a whole lot available in terms of, you know, viewing footage and streaming. There was no streaming at all.
That was the first footage I saw of Ronnie Van Zant. I mean, I'd never seen anything before that. And I think that's why it has stayed with me so long. It was like there was nothing before that except a clip, a couple of clips in the tribute tour VHS tape when the band got together in '87 and went on tour as the tribute tour, and then they released a VHS of that, like a mini documentary, and they had put some footage on there, a little bit of T for Texas and a little bit of Ronnie doing that interview where him and Gary are out fishing on a boat. But other than that, there was never any like full concert footage that I had ever seen.
Right.
Everything I saw was, you know, with Johnny, which, you know, everybody can say what they want to say, whether you like it or not. But for people like me who were not around when Skynyrd was in the original format, without Skynyrd from '87 on, I don't know that I would have discovered them and enjoyed them as much as I have. You know, I have such a huge appreciation for the guys that are keeping it going. But, you know, I know what people think about it being a tribute band or whatever, but they'll tell you too, they are a tribute band, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Listen, Gary Rossington was there when it first started.
Sure.
The man's got to eat like everybody else.
That's right.
And musicians are just like anybody else, albeit a doctor, a construction man, a person delivering packages, you know, to your home at your front door. I'm a little older than you, John.
Just a little.
Just a little.
Just a little.
I remember hearing the news of the original Skynyrd plane crash. I was a little too young to go to concerts, so it didn't really bother me at that time because I was still trying to explore, you know, my own world as a just about coming on puberty boy, to give you a little idea of my age. But by the time the Skynyrd tour, the tribute tour, had come around in '87, back in the day, there were record collectors shows. They would have these record collectors shows at there was a lot of Knights of Columbus up in New York. It's a lot like, you know, the Masons Lodge or whatever. You know, you could like rent space there, or the Shriners, and
Sure.
you could have parties or conventions there, and about 3 or 4 times a year they'd have the record collector show. And in the 80s, there began to show up there at some booths video people. They would show up with bootleg videos. I got to see Knebworth in 1980, in the 1980s rather, almost in its entirety. I believe I still have the tape. I still have it on VHS, as well as Asbury Park and the Pepsi Cola commercial.
Oh yeah.
And the Pepsi Cola commercial I missed out on. As I was 11 years old, and my parents were going to go. I want to give you a personal story here. My parents wanted to go out to the movies. They were going to take me to the movies. And they said, okay, it was the summer of 78. Here's the newspaper. You got a choice. Either Jaws 2 or Grease. And I said, you know, I'm 11 years old, and I'm thinking, I'm kind of embarrassed that I never saw the first Jaws. All my friends saw the first Jaws movie, and I never saw the first Jaws movie. Maybe it might give me something to talk about. I said, well, I'm going to go see Jaws 2. And I went and saw Jaws 2, and it was such a disappointment as a movie, number one. And number two, finding out later on that at the beginning of Grease, right before they would show the movie Grease, was that Pepsi Cola tribute to Skynyrd.
Wow.
They showed that in the theaters in the summer of 78. And I missed out on that.
You know, the thing about that Pepsi video, it got me thinking about it. You know, when they did that, I mean, obviously nobody knew there was going to be a plane crash and kill 3 members of the band. So Pepsi was wanting to promote the band. So just think about the plane crash hadn't happened. I mean, you got a big company like Pepsi getting behind Skynyrd. I mean, they may have wanted to be I'm assuming they were going to be like a sponsor of the tour or something. You know,
I would imagine so.
You know, I mean, Skynyrd was on their way to being the biggest band in America when Street Survivors came out. No doubt. No doubt.
And I believe the addition of Steve Gaines facilitated that in a big way.
Absolutely.
Big way.
Absolutely. And you can,
musician.
when you hear his playing, it's hard to believe he had only been with the band, a couple of weeks when they recorded the live
One More
album?
From the Road was
Exactly.
He was only touring with them for about 2 weeks.
And all you've got to do is listen to T for Texas. That's all you need to know how good he was. Not to mention his solo on the end of Sweet Home Alabama.
The end of Sweet Home Alabama. And I get goosebumps. I'm showing John my goosebumps right now when I think about Ronnie listening to Billy Powell play at the end of that Sweet Home Alabama at the Fox Theater, and you hear him go, "Come on, Okie.
Yeah.
Meet Atlanta."
That's right.
And Steve Gaines just cut into that solo, and I can just imagine people at the Fox, their jaws just dropping to the ground saying, "Who is this guy?"
Exactly.
Otherworldly, boy.
You know, something that you and I have talked about. I don't know what you think about this, but Skynyrd, such an iconic band, and the three of us being musicians, I think for whatever reason, I don't know why, because it drives me nuts. People don't appreciate their musicianship the way that they should.
Right.
Particularly other musicians, maybe that aren't into Southern rock as the three of us are. But I'm sure the two of you have had conversations with other guitar players, band members. Yeah, Skynyrd's good, but that stuff's kind of easy to play. I think they're thinking about, you know, the Sweet Home Alabama, the standards that you hear all the time.
Right.
But even the standards that you hear, they're obviously not listening to it with a keen ear, because nothing that they played was simple. It may have come across sounding simple, but if you really play it the correct way, nothing is simple about that band.
That's the beauty of Skynyrd.
It drives me insane.
Yeah.
To hear people talk about it that way.
Exactly. And one of the things about that is Kid Rock, you know, a few years ago did All Summer Long, which was a mashup of Sweet Home Alabama and Werewolves of London by Warren Zevon.
Yep.
Yeah.
When you hear the lick to Sweet Home Alabama in that, the guitar player is not playing it the way Ed King wrote it.
No.
He's going dun 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 dun. He's not doing dun 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 dun. You know, And most
Ed
people
King had that bounce on there, man.
that don't
Yeah.
really pay attention to the song play it that way. And I have tried for years to play it like Ed King, and I'm pretty close, but it ain't Ed King, I promise you.
And that's what you just said has just reminded me of the fact that it's the intricacies in their parts that made them such good musicians. Alan Collins, Gary Rossington, Ed King, and of course later on Steve Gaines. What you had was three distinct sounding guitar players doing their parts, always complementing each other.
Never sounding like one another.
Never sounding like one another, and not only that, when one took over a lead, it was almost ordained for, you know, I'm not going to name a name, but let's say guitar player A, because I can't think of a song right now in particular, but all right, guitar player A is going to do the fills in this one. Guitar player B is going to do the solo. Well, guitar player C decided to maybe just play an acoustic on this one, and or change that around and take away the acoustic and put a slide guitar in another one. That was the thing that I really think set Skynyrd apart at that time, from being, let's just say, musically just on the coattails of the Allman Brothers, because they weren't. They were precisely different sound. They didn't extend into long jams, which I love. I mean, that's why I'm an Allman Brothers fan. But to go back and just listen to great songs, great lyrics, a good sounding tune, and distinct guitar parts, and not only that, a guitar player working with another guitar player is hard enough, but a guitar player working with two other guitar players and having this end result, that's miraculous, man.
When you have that many guitar players, you
man.
got to know when to not play at that point.
Absolutely, and that's
put your egos aside.
Absolutely, and that's the key to a great player, I believe, is not what you're playing, but it's when you're it's what to not play.
I saw an interview with Ed King, who I believe wrote the riff to Saturday Night Special.
Yes, he did.
If I'm not mistaken.
He did.
Yes, as well. Yeah.
So he was talking about the riff, how he came up with it, and he was like, you know, I had this solo in my head that I was going to play, and I was coming up with it in my head, and when we got to it, I believe, is it Gary?
Yeah, Gary Rossington.
He said Gary started playing the solo, and I kind of got, you know, Ed was saying, I kind of got a little miffed about it at first, and then when I heard it, I was like,
Ed miffed with
Gary? Why would I
Gary?
even say anything? Because it just fits perfectly, you know. And so I think I'm sure they had their fights, obviously, like every band.
Yeah.
But I mean, they had that respect towards one another.
Oh yeah, even after years,
just like you said, all egos aside.
Because he was like, once I heard the first note, you know, wow. Why would I even?
That's what's
say
cool
anything
about
it?
That's
Because
what's cool
it fits
about
perfectly.
Ed King, man. Years after he was out of the band, and that didn't end well when he left the second time around. The first time didn't either. But years later, you know, even a year up till almost right before he passed away, in an interview, he talked about Saturday Night Special, and he said, "Man, I got to give credit where credit is due." He said that solo that Gary came up with is genius.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it maybe it sounds simple, and to guitar players it might be simple to play, but Gary's the one that came up with it, and it just fits the song. I mean, it's like a vocal part almost.
Sure.
You know.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, so you know, back to the original subject. You know, that new documentary is coming out. I think it's April 4th is the date on that. But Eagle Records is putting that out, and look for it, man. If you haven't pre-ordered it on Amazon or wherever, check it out, man. It's Knebworth 1976, and I suggest you get the Blu-ray. Actually, I got the LP with DVD, and I got the LP with CD and Blu-ray. I got all of them coming to me.
Man,
I could not turn it down, man. To hear that concert on LP on this old record player I got, man, I can't wait. The wife and the kids are going to have to leave the house because.
Well, you're going to have to what? Turn it up.
That's right, exactly. So let's move forward to one of the, I say newer bands, but the next band we're going to talk about has been around for over 20 years, I think. Like what, 97? I can't. Todd, you know more about Blackberry Smoke than anybody in the
I'm a
room.
Blackberry Smoke homer. Yes, I am.
You
It's
know.
over 20 years. I don't know how many people used to have direct TV, satellite dish.
I did. Used to.
I first got introduced to them.
I had the other one, I think.
They would show these random concerts on this channel, and I turned it on one day, and it was these 4 guys on stage who look how they look, but they sounded amazing, you know. And this was in their infancy stage. And the first time I saw them live was at the Lincoln Theater in Raleigh. And at that time, they were in the parking lot talking to everyone, you know, because they were still small. And that concert came across as just happenstance. It was supposed to be another band there on that same bill that DirecTV was filming for that concert, but they didn't play, so they filmed Blackberry Smoke. And they said after that date, I think until COVID recently, they do about 180 to 200 dates a year. So they've built their following touring. You know, they've had no radio support, nothing like that. And
that's
every
for
album
sure.
gets better. And the musicianship
Another sign of
is
a great
incredible.
band.
Absolutely.
No
Absolutely.
radio play, and yet somehow your audience has grown exponentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they, if you've ever heard them cover, they did a cover album not too long ago.
Yeah, they did.
You can tell their influences by listening to the covers that they do, and when you see them live, they'll throw out covers every now and then. But to me, over the past 10 years, it hasn't been a more influential band to me than Blackberry Smoke, just because of I don't know. Sometimes I have tunnel vision. Hear something I like and I get hooked on it, but they keep putting out so much new music. You have enough to keep absorbing it and listening to them evolve. And I've seen them 10 times live, I think.
Wow.
And never heard an off note. I mean, I've heard off notes, but never seen an off show, I should say. It's definitely no tracking. It's no, you know, other musicians behind stage. It's just come out and melt your face off with their Marshall and Germino and orange amps. And
Their guitar tones
you
are so
leave there
unbelievable.
yeah, they're
Really.
plexi guys.
Oh,
they're
they are,
plexi
man.
guys. And you can tell it through the tone, because the plexi is going to get a certain tone, and they are sort of loud live, but not so loud that you can't enjoy it and understand what's going on. But the guitar tones are incredible.
All right, so can I ask you, from being there so much,
Sure.
10 times you said.
10 times.
All right. Is it safe to call their tone well-controlled overdrive, even with the volume? Because like there's not any noisy feedback coming from their amps. You know, I hear them playing. We just watched a video of one of their newer songs, and I'm just like, man, you know, the right notes sustain at the right time. I mean, when Jack was doing that intro, what was the name of that song? The first one?
Hey,
Hey,
Delilah.
Delilah.
Yeah, Hey Delilah.
Yeah.
You know, he was doing that intro, and it was just, you know, the notes, despite the distortion in the amp, you could hear every note. You follow what I'm saying? They really have Jack has a great way of just punching out the note exactly the way it should be punched out. You know,
Who is Jack?
Out of the amp. Jack Starr.
Charlie Starr.
Charlie Starr. Why do I
That's
keep
okay.
saying Jack Starr?
That's okay.
Oh my goodness.
People may think I'm a big stalkerish after hearing this story.
That's
but
right.
John
I called
was with
J-Mo
me.
Jai a few times, so it's okay.
I'm such a fan of his tone, I found the amp builder that builds his amps for him. And John went with me to pick one up.
Yeah, he's like local.
I
to
have one.
us.
Okay, yeah,
He's
that's right.
super
Yep.
nice
Yeah.
guy. But he's a Marshall savant. Anything you can think of question-wise about how to build a Marshall plexi, or anything, he can tell you. So
Give him
I
a
have
shout out, Todd. Tell him who
Greg
it is.
Germino.
Greg Germino, man.
Germino amps. Great guy.
Yeah.
I bought, Charlie plays 50 watts heads. I bought a 35 watt head, but he built it just like to the specs of what Charlie's has is built.
You mean Jack?
So it's
I had to do that. Sorry.
you got to get some air going through it, as they say, to get that overdrive on it.
Yeah.
But it's very clean overdrive. I don't know if that makes sense.
What speakers are you driving it through?
Greenbacks.
Oh wow.
2 greenbacks and a birch cabinet, birch cabinets made of birch wood.
Yeah.
And John went with me to pick it up, and when he first, I had something wrong with my finger. I don't know what it was, but when he started playing it to show me how it sounded, I was like, "Oh my God, this is it! I found the holy grail of tones now." Because you can't hide behind the overdrive. You know, like some overdrive, it gets too distorted, and you can hide some sloppiness behind it.
Right.
This is just tone for days and sustain.
It's like their first. You listen to their first album, and then you listen to their most recent and the one that's coming out. I mean, their first album is awesome. Every song on there is great, but when you compare it to how they've progressed, it's a more harsher sound.
Mm-hmm.
It's not bad. I don't mean harsh in a bad way. It's just, I don't know. The guitars are heavier and they're not as smooth, a little less smooth.
Yeah.
And you can hear from album to album how they're really finding their sound. Just
Really?
like any other
But
band.
what impressed me about Hey Delilah was that there's still, this is this year. That was this year, this song. Right?
Sure, yeah.
I'm still hearing like a sense of roots coming from their playing, which makes me convicted right now. Because number one, between calling Charlie Jack and hearing Delilah and hearing how kind of rootsy it still was, despite the driven amp and the loudness of the guitars and everything, it's like, man, I think I gotta finally just a little word to our audience. I'm like so old school, I almost listen to nothing new, so I really think it's time to download
You need to
a Blackberry
download
Smoke album.
the live album they did, Leave a Scar. It was recorded, it's not there anymore, Ziggy's in Winston-Salem.
Okay.
That was probably 5 years ago, but they're using their Jaminos on that. And
Really?
It's
Oh,
live,
man, yeah,
and
yeah.
it's an incredible live album.
Yeah, it is. I got the vinyl edition,
It's,
and it's awesome.
You know, it's great when you have credit already. You have like a little bit of a balance, on the iTunes, so you have the money to spend just in the iTunes. Yeah, I think I'm going to do that.
There you go.
I think I'm going to get Blackberry Smoke, man.
Well, the exciting thing about Blackberry Smoke now is they just keep evolving, and it's like you said, they're still keeping the roots of their music intact, but I don't know how you do that. How you can stay with a sound that you had consistent all these years and still evolve. I mean, but now they've added some new members to the band. Benji Shanks playing killer slide guitar.
Oh my word, that guy's great.
Preston Holcomb is percussion, and then they've added the Black Betties, which is two twin sisters singing backups, who are singing on this album. They also sang on the Capricorn tribute CD that they did a while back, but just adding those elements, they fit right in like they've always been there, now. And I know that Benji's been playing on and off with Blackberry Smoke for a while, and he and Charlie had done some acoustic shows together, but it's like you go back and listen to 3 or 4 albums ago, and then you listen to the new stuff that we've heard today. It just fits. It's like you can't imagine that it wasn't there before. I mean, they just fit like it's part of the puzzle. And I'm excited about this new album, man. I just can't wait to hear it.
Too. Warren Haynes is going to be on one song, and Jamie Johnson's going to be on another song.
Wow.
Have you heard the song they did with Greg Allman on one of their albums?
I knew about it, but I don't really remember.
Great song.
Yeah, it is.
Was there a video on YouTube of that?
I don't think so. Did that come out before Greg passed?
Yeah.
Or right after? It was really close.
Not a music video, but a.
Oh yeah, well you can probably get the track itself. On
yeah.
YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember.
You should check that out.
Sure.
That's one of the last recordings Greg did. I don't know if he did that.
No, I remember
before.
hearing it. I just don't remember much about it.
Yeah, great song. Greg's vocal on that is really good.
When is Greg's vocal not?
No.
Well, there was, but just saying overall, even when it's bad, it's good sometimes.
Exactly. Cool, man. Well, that's our first show.
Our first test run.
No, we'll put this one out. So, y'all, we're gonna come back and do some more shows for you. Probably another one next month. And this was it. This was the test run. But we've had fun talking about our favorite bands, and hopefully we'll find something cool to talk about on the next show. And till next time, peace out.
Take care.